Namaste everybody, Lisa Romano here, the Breakthrough Life Coach, and today I wanted to talk about family secrets. You know, those of us who came from dysfunctional homes, we held family secrets. We held secrets that we were ashamed of. And we came from homes, in most cases, where there was the no talk rule, and we weren't allowed to talk about what was happening in our home. And there weren't adults in our lives that were attuning themselves to what was happening in our experience. We were being ignored. Our shame was being ignored. Our pain was being ignored. And when that happened, so much began to get locked inside of us, especially toxic shame. So toxic shame is different than, let's say, guilt. Guilt means that I did something. Maybe I said something and I hurt someone else's feelings and I feel bad about that. And guilt can actually be productive in that it can help me become a better person. It can help me become more empathetic. It can help me learn. It can help me understand that something that I said or something that I did or something that I missed hurt someone else's feelings. And there's growth in that. As long as you understand that it's okay to make a mistake, and as long as you understand that you're a human being and that you don't associate what you did with who you are per se, meaning that now I am worthless. This happened and now I am worthless. That's the difference between shame. Shame means I am bad. I am no good. Lots of times shame is the result of coming from a perfectionistic family where children were taught that they had no right to make a mistake. I know for myself, I lived feeling like I was under the microscope and I was very afraid, and my parents often talked about how soldier-like my brother and my sister and I were. Well, that's because we were freaking scared like you wouldn't believe. We were scared out of our boots to act like children. We were terrorized. We were just so afraid all the time. And, we were so afraid to make a mistake. And in addition to being afraid of making a mistake because, you feel like it's wrong to be a child. It's wrong to make a mess. It's wrong to ask questions. Being ashamed could come from living in a family where there is terrible dysfunction, where there is addiction and no one's talking about it. In my case, I came from a long line of alcoholics, and my uncle, my godfather, was homeless. And he was sleeping under a park bench that was like blocks away from my home, and he was that homeless person with the cardboard box shielding him from the rain under a park bench. And, when I walked down the street, I knew that my uncle was one of the homeless people in the park, but we never talked about it, right? We never got a chance to talk about how that affected us as kids, knowing that my friends were playing in that park and, my uncle was living under the bench, one of my uncles was an alcoholic and was running drugs for a while, and he was in prison and had shootouts with cops on the highways. Like, I'm not kidding, and then I had an aunt who had paranoid schizophrenia. I mean, these aren't the types of things that you go to school and you talk about. I've had clients who grew up in foster care and they don't want to talk about it. I've had clients who were adopted and they don't want to talk about it. There's shame associated to, being adopted, growing up in foster care, or having family members who have mental illnesses. Or when something's happening in our experience as children and it's abusive and it's pervasive and nobody's talking about it, right? That makes us feel like there's something wrong with us. We carry this with us. It's almost like a flaw, right? And we wear it like the scarlet letter. And our fear is that someday someone's going to find out that we have this flaw. And the secrets, that's where a lot of our toxic shame comes from. And this video, by the way, has been inspired by the amazing John Bradshaw. And it's hard to believe anybody hasn't heard of him, but if you are suffering from toxic shame, I highly, highly suggest his work, and especially the book, Healing That Shame That Binds You. His work was phenomenal for me when I was really digging into this work, full time. And I really do think you should check out his work and that book. It's amazing. And so I've been inspired by him to create this video and to talk about family secrets and to help people connect the dots, right? So when we come from dysfunctional homes, there's this no talk rule. There are a lot of family secrets. There could be drug abuse. There could be sex abuse. There could be physical violence. There could be mental illness. there could be gambling, there could be something happening in the home that you are ashamed of, right? And you are afraid to talk about. And now this shame comes from all of the abuse. On top of it, children think that it's their fault. What's happening must be my fault. So if mommy isn't attuning herself to me, which is what's supposed to happen, or daddy isn't attuning himself to me, or if I'm being ignored in this chaos, then it must be my fault. You know, I've had clients say that they thought it's because they were the middle child, or because they were born but they weren't wanted. You know, they were a surprise baby. You know, one of the things that I came up with is it must be because I have green eyes, because mom has blue eyes and dad has brown eyes and my sister has blue eyes and my brother has brown eyes. I'm the odd man out. It must be because I have brown eyes. So there's a lot of dysfunction, there's a lot of chaos, and there are a lot of secrets, and we're not allowed to talk about it. God forbid we talk about it, right? And we are not being modeled healthy behaviors. Another thing that I love what John Bradshaw says is that, you know, codependency is absolutely an addiction to a relationship and to another person. And, you know, when we grow up in homes that have this dynamic codependency, we have a cognitive deficit, meaning that we have been denied coping skills. We don't know how to set boundaries. We don't know how to love ourselves. This is information that we are void of, and it's not our fault. And it can be very, very difficult as an adult in an adult world to manage ourselves when we have not been modeled healthy behaviors, when we have been modeling addiction, when we have been modeled addiction, when we have been modeled codependency, when there are things happening and abuse is happening, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and nobody's talking about it, right? So if no one's talking about it, then you're not able to express your feelings about it. You're going to experience shame as a result of it. Now, I want to talk about how that type of toxic shame, remember, guilt is different. Guilt means, wow, I have done something or said something that has caused someone else pain, or I've done something that goes against my moral code, and I feel guilt over this, which is healthy, as long as you don't assume that there's something wrong with you, then you can actually fix your behavior moving forward. It's a wonderful thing when you're able to say, wow, I made a mistake, and I'm not perfect, and I have to forgive myself, you know. And it's so important if you're going to recover from these types of injuries. It's really important that you understand how frightening it is to accept that you have hurt somebody, or accept that you're not perfect, right? Because that's where I think so many of us get into trouble. It's almost like there's a vault inside of us, and shame is like this boulder that's been pushed in front of this vault, right? And inside are all the fears that we are not good enough. We're not good enough. I came from foster care. I'm not good enough. My father was an alcoholic. I'm not good enough. That's behind that stone. And so shame is associated to fear, and the fear is that I'm not good enough. And as adults, what happens, I think, sometimes, and I just want to share this, is that when something happens to us when we're an adult, and we feel discarded, let's say, or we have an argument with somebody, it could be as innocuous as someone saying, why were you late this morning? That type of a comment can take somebody who has toxic shame, I am not good enough, and pull them down a rabbit hole, and it could throw them for a loop and into a depression even, and tremendous anxiety, and it can be tremendous to try to pull yourself out of that. If you've experienced toxic shame in your past, if you've experienced tremendous pain in childhood, and if you've experienced shame that has made you feel like you're afraid to be yourself, or you're afraid that if you make a mistake, people are going to find out your dirty little secrets. We have to acknowledge that those of us who have had these types of experiences, whether it's sexual abuse or physical abuse, emotional neglect, or we suffered some other type of shame condition, alcoholism, foster care situations, emotional incest, and alike. These are our dirty little secrets, right? And nobody's talking about them, right? And when we come from a dysfunctional home, the idea is that no one's allowed to make a mistake, right? And we never received unconditional love. And so if before the age of, let's say, 3, we did not experience that, we didn't experience unconditional love. We didn't experience the sense that it was okay to make mistakes. It's okay to bump into a wall. It's okay to spill milk. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have a need. It's okay to... We all had fears. And if our parents weren't very attuned to that, and they shamed us or they mocked us or they just didn't show up for us, or we experienced some type of abuse, right? Then what will happen is we carry this shame into adulthood and it stays with us. So it shows up in negative self-talk. It shows up in us freaking out every time we hit a bump in the road or in a relationship. It shows up when we sense that someone's criticizing us. It'll show up. We live in fear of people finding out about our dirty little secret, but we're not aware of it because the brain is pretty linear and the ego is linear. And we are under the illusion that everything that's happening to us now is a result of what's happened to us right now. So if I walk into the office and, I hit traffic and I'm 10 minutes late, but I was really struggling to get to work, and, I'm paranoid about being late again because I'm afraid that if I'm late, that can lead to someone thinking I'm not perfect, right? Because we're afraid that other people are going to find out that we're not perfect. And it's maddening. So we walk into the office and we're 10 minutes late and our hearts are pounding, and we don't feel confident in saying and being okay with the fact that there was traffic. It has nothing to do with me, right? I didn't create the traffic. I was up at the right time and I was in my car at the right time. I am worthy. I am enough. I really tried. So somebody who doesn't have toxic shame, that's their thought process. Wow, it sucks that I'm late. Let me call ahead to the office and let them know that I'm going to be late. And they really don't think too much about it. They know that they're a human being. They know that stuff happens. They know that they're not perfect. They know this is something that they can't control. But this attack, this shame attack, this pounding of the heart, wondering what people are going to think. What is she going to think? What is she going to say? And sometimes what we can do is we can get triggered and go into defense mode and walk in wanting to defend ourselves when there's nothing to defend. Right? In lots of cases, there's nothing to defend. It's the toxic shame from the past. We're gearing ourselves up for this argument because we're afraid that because we are late and things are not perfect, this might come back and bite us in the ass. Someone might say, hey, you're late. Now we have to protect ourselves, right? And what's happening is we're reacting to this toxic shame. We're amping ourselves up. We're wondering what the person's going to think. Oh, my office manager is going to think that I was out with my friends, and my office manager is going to talk to the other lady in the other cubicle about me. Now I'm not going to be invited to lunch, and we just go on and on and on. And it's because we're so afraid that someone's going to find out our dirty little secret. And so how do we fix this? How do we move through toxic shame when we're getting a toxic shame attack, when somebody has said something or insinuated something, and we start to feel the panic as if we are worthless, we are nothing, and that we feel like the whole world is going to fall apart because someone doesn't see us the way we would like them to see us, right? And so I think what we have to do, first of all, is acknowledge when we are experiencing a toxic shame attack. So a toxic shame attack is tied to all the triggers that are associated to fight or flight or freeze. Very oftentimes we'll have rumination, we're worrying. Sometimes we'll go into defensive mode. Sometimes we'll shut down. Sometimes we'll attack. Sometimes we'll retreat. But most of the time we're in worry, and it feels like doom is on us. It's going to happen. The whole world's going to fall apart. What's going to happen next? Oh my God. Oh my God. What are they going to say? What is she going to say? Oh my God. And we freak out, right? And so that's a key. If something has happened in your life and it is triggering you to the point where you're afraid, you feel like, oh my God, they're going to find out my secret. I really want you to take a moment and to understand that that's not your fault. For those of us who are experiencing toxic shame attacks, we'll feel like a deer in headlights. We'll actually stop breathing. If we don't get the validation we thought we were going to get, right? We can feel frozen, so hurt. What does this mean? I tried so hard to please this person and this person doesn't see me. Oh my God, it means that I'm stupid. It means that I'm not good enough, right? And we'll retreat. Very, very important that we recognize when we are experiencing this fight or flight or freeze response to something that's happened outside of ourselves. So acknowledging and being self-aware around it is crucial. It's really important that you begin to quiet your mind as soon as you can, because the ghosts of the past are going to come up. Your fear is that people are going to find out that you're not perfect, right? And that goes back to the secrets that you felt and that you had to hide from other people when you were a child, whether it was mental illness in the family or alcoholism or whatever. So as an adult, you can be triggered in the now, but understand that when there's still toxic shame that needs to be resolved, what will happen is the fear and the trepidation that you felt that someone's going to find out my dirty little secret, excuse me, that floods the amygdala, that floods the brain, and your brain will feel like it's fizzing and it's on fire. Your skin will feel like it's burning. Your ears will feel like it's burning. Your heart will beat out of your chest. So that's a signal that the alarm has been sounded, and that's a signal that you've got to do all you can to quiet the mind, right? Do not react. One of the worst things that we can do when we are triggered is to react, right? We're reacting out of defensive mode, and when we're triggered, we're not thinking clearly. We're not thinking clearly. So I know it's difficult for a lot of us, but when you're triggered, try to remember, don't react. Because what you want to do is you want to proceed, with your next steps, knowing that you proceeded calm and not out of reactivity, right? Not always easy to do, but that is my suggestion. So how do you do that? One of the best things that you can do is ground yourself to time and space. When we get triggered, very oftentimes we're in panic mode, right? And so what I like to do is I like to orient myself exactly where I am. So I'll put my feet on the floor and I'll put my hands on my desk and I'll say, I am here. I'm in my office. Everything's fine. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'll pay attention to the sounds in the room. I just heard the fire station sound its alarm. So if I was in the middle of a spiral, then I would pay attention to what I just heard. If there was something burning, like a candle burning, I'd pay attention. I'd bring my senses and my awareness to what was happening. So that brings us to present time. That helps our brain understand there is no train coming, because the brain can't tell the difference between a perceived fear and an imagined fear. So when we are reacting to an old psychological fear, whether like toxic shame and, oh my God, they're going to figure out that I'm not perfect, right? All those dirty family secrets that we never talked about, my brain is going to react as if, I'm standing on a railroad track and the train's coming. So it's really, really important that you take over your mind and you say, wait a minute. I know what this is. I've been triggered. Let me breathe. Let me breathe. Let me breathe. Let me relax. Let me hold on to myself. Let me remind myself that I am enough. 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 So orienting yourself to time and space, taking the time to stop, take a few deep breaths. It's really important that only a calm mind can take a deep breath. Very interesting. One of the first things that happens to our body and our physiology when we get triggered is our breathing changes, right? And so what you want to try to do is maintain your breathing, take control over your breathing. Don't leave it up to the autonomic nervous system, because you're going to be panicking. Your breath's going to be really, really shallow. So remember to breathe. Breathe in fresh air, and then tell yourself you're breathing out the anxiety. Breathe in fresh air, and then breathe out the anxiety. Breathe in newness, and exhale anxiety. And do this enough until you start to feel like your body is in a state of a more relaxed state. What we have to do is recognize that we are all human and we all make mistakes, and none of us are perfect, right? And we have to nurture that idea within us that we are human, we all make mistakes, and everything's okay. And we also have to nurture the idea that we're in an imperfect world, or maybe the world is perfect, but the people in the world, our family, our friends, whoever, co-workers, not everybody is perfect, right? And they're going to make mistakes too. But that has to start with you. we have to end the perfectionism and the fear of feeling seen and having a flaw exposed. That has to end with us. And the more we love us, and the more we accept us, and the more humble we are with self, and the more we take accountability for when we've done things that maybe hurt other people, and the more we forgive ourselves, the easier it is for us to see people in a realistic light, right? When you're on the road to recovery, it's very important that you check yourself. And humility is absolutely part of the process. And you will eventually come to a point where you have to check yourself and understand that in your state of unconsciousness, you may have been reacting to triggers, and you may have been reactive, and below the veil, you may have behaved in a way that actually hurt other people. There's no doubt that I hurt my children, right? And I feel tremendous empathy for them. And it was tough to forgive myself. But I have to tell you that the more I exposed what I did, the more I understood why I was the way I was, the more I revealed it with a phenomenal psychotherapist. And there are phenomenal psychotherapists out there. You have to be picky. But the more I exposed them, the more I got comfortable with them, with journaling with them, and the more I made connections, I realized that what happened was I was able to say, I am enough. I am an imperfect human being. I am on a process of healing and recovery, and I have made mistakes, and I'm so sorry for them. But that doesn't mean that I, as a creature, am worthless, right? So maybe my behaviors, especially my behaviors that are tied to being below the veil or triggered, maybe they weren't the best. But me, at my core, I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. And so from time to time, you may be triggered, and you may be dealing with some of the issues and the symptoms of a shame attack that we talked about earlier. And so I want you to make sure that you are very, very aware of any of the secrets that were kept in your family. Be very aware of the possible secrets and stories of your family that you have been ashamed of and you've held on to yourself, and you may have internalized, right? You may be so afraid that people are going to find out or find this out about you, right? That you're living your life like trying to pretend that you are perfect, and you don't want people to ever see this vulnerability, because right behind that stone is I'm not good enough, and here are all my flaws. And what are you really, really afraid of? You're afraid of really being seen in a vulnerable state, because in our most vulnerable state, when I say to you, this is who I am and this is what I've done, I'm sharing myself with you. And now you can hurt me with that, right? But you can hurt me with that only if I haven't forgiven myself for that. If I'm still carrying shame for that, then you can hurt me with that. If I'm not carrying shame with that, and I've integrated it and I've processed it and I've released the emotions tied to it, then I can show up and say, this is what I've done. This is how I've behaved, and I'm so sorry. And I work every day to make sure that's never going to happen again. And I have forgiven myself. When we're able to do that for ourselves, then nobody can use a guilt, a shame weapon against us. This is really tough stuff. And healing from codependency and healing from shame, it's an ongoing process, but it can be done. But it has to be worked at diligently. It has to be something that we're aware of. It has to be something that we want to heal. So I really hope that this video has helped you. I really hope that this video has inspired you to believe that you are enough. And I really hope that you've walked away with a little bit more clarity around shame. And I hope that you've gained some insight into some of the tools that you can use to help you heal toxic shame. Self-compassion, dear one, and self-love. It's very difficult when you've been triggered, especially by someone that you love, and they've discarded you, or they've made you feel like you're worthless, or they're calling you names, or they have just abused you in some way. There was a trust there, and when that trust is broken, if we're still carrying toxic shame, how we feel is, oh no, they're going to find out that I'm not the person that I want them to think I am. And if they find out that I have these wounds, then they'll think that I'm worthless. And I don't think there's any curse worse than for someone to think that on any level that they are worthless. And so many of us struggle with an unconscious belief, and some of us are conscious of it, but many of us struggle with this belief that we're not enough, that we're not enough. And it's so important that we recognize that and we do all we can to separate our behaviors from our divinity. And also with other people, we separate their behavior from their divinity. We can be unhappy with someone's behavior, but from the higher state of awareness, we can still send them love and light. That doesn't mean we have to hang out with them. That doesn't mean that we have to sleep with them. It doesn't mean that we have to have them over for dinner. It just means that we're choosing on the road to recovery to get out of a state of resistance in regard to this person, and we don't want to stand in judgment of that person or ourselves, and we're choosing to go for a non-resistant state of being, and we're trying to move towards a state of love, a state of peace, and a state of harmony. So it takes a while to shift out of the shame trigger and to remember that you may have been triggered and someone may have triggered you, but you can gain control over your emotions, remember what's happening, and then get clearer about what's happening in the experience so that you can separate all of these ideas out and come to a point where you realize that you are enough and that what's happening in the now may purely be a process that has not been healed yet from the past. So dear one, know that you absolutely are enough. Know that there is a light within you. Know that it's not your fault if that light feels far away. But if you keep working on loving yourself and healing yourself and having self-empathy and self-forgiveness and self-understanding, your life will open up for you and you will feel more connected to the divine inner self than you could have ever imagined. Please check out the work of John Bradshaw and know that I have meditations on YouTube as well as Insight Timer that I've created to help you release and heal toxic shame. Namaste, dear ones. I bow to the love and the light that is absolutely in you. Bye for now.